In a quiet snow-covered town, a lonely old black woman was carrying her groceries home. On the street she saw a Hell's Angel and his little daughter being driven away by the neighbors. Despite everyone's disapproval, she opened her door to the father and child, even as the whole neighborhood turned against her. No one knew that disaster would soon strike, and the very man they had rejected would be the one to save them all. Before we dive deeper into today's story, I know many of us are looking for simple, natural ways to stay active and strong. That's why I'd like to introduce you to Shilajit Essential Extract. If you'd like to check it out, just use the link in the description, or scan the QR code right here on your screen. The first snow of December fell soft and silent over Millbrook, a small town where everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever changed. White flakes drifted past the windows of St. Mary's Church as the Sunday morning service drew to a close. Father Michael stood at the pulpit, his gentle voice carrying through the half-empty pews. "Sometimes," he said, looking out at the familiar faces, "God sends us unexpected guests to test our compassion." In the third row, Evelyn Carter sat alone, her gray hair neatly pinned, her hands folded in her lap. At 60 years old she had occupied this same seat every Sunday for the past 15 years, ever since the accident at the factory took her husband Thomas. And long before that, since the fever took her only son Michael Jr., when he was just 7 years old. She bowed her head as Father Michael's words washed over her. The wooden pew felt harder than it used to. The church felt colder, everything did. After the service, Evelyn drove her old sedan home through streets decorated with cheerful Christmas lights that seemed to mock her solitude. Her house stood at the end of Maple Street, a small weathered two-story with peeling paint and a front porch where Thomas's wooden rocking chair still sat, year after year, never rocking. Inside, the house was dim and cold. Evelyn turned up the thermostat, though she knew she'd turn it back down before bed to save on the heating bill. In the kitchen she reheated last night's soup, too much for one person, but she always made too much, a habit from when there had been 3. She ate at the table, in her usual seat. Thomas's chair sat empty across from her. Michael's booster seat had been gone for years, but she could still see the small scuff marks his shoes had left on the table leg. "Just you and me tonight, Thomas," she whispered to the empty chair. Outside, the December wind rattled the windows. The next morning, Evelyn wrapped herself in her heavy coat and drove to the town square for her weekly shopping. Millbrook's main street was decorated for Christmas, with garlands strung between the lampposts and a large tree in front of the courthouse. She had just parked her car when she noticed the crowd. About 20 people had gathered in front of Henderson's real estate office, their voices rising in sharp whispers. Evelyn's chest tightened. In a town like Millbrook, crowds meant trouble. She approached slowly, her shopping bag clutched to her chest. "I said no, and that's final." Mr. Henderson's voice boomed from the doorway of his office. "I don't rent to your kind." Evelyn craned her neck to see past the crowd. A man stood on the sidewalk, tall and broad-shouldered, his arms covered in dark tattoos that crept up to his neck. He wore a black leather vest with patches, the kind she'd seen on television, the kind that meant he was a biker. Hell's Angels, the largest patch read across his back. In his arms, he held a little girl, maybe 4 years old, with tangled blonde hair and a dirt-smudged face. She buried her face in her father's shoulder. "I can pay up front," the man said, his voice low and controlled. 3 months' rent, cash." "I don't care if you've got 3 years' rent," Henderson spat. "I know your type. You'll trash the place, bring your gang buddies around. We don't want that here." Mrs. Thompson, who owned the flower shop, stood at the front of the crowd, her arms crossed. "He's right, you know. This is a decent town, we have families here. Children." The little girl in the biker's arms lifted her head. "Daddy," she said softly, "are we gonna sleep in the park again tonight?" The man's jaw clenched. He adjusted his grip on his daughter and turned away without another word. The crowd began to disperse, muttering amongst themselves. Evelyn stood frozen on the sidewalk, her heart pounding. That little girl, that small voice asking about sleeping in a park. She remembered Michael Jr.'s voice, so similar, asking her once, "Mama, why is Daddy not coming home?" 3 days after the funeral, when he still didn't understand that gone meant forever, her feet moved before her mind could stop them. "Excuse me," she called out. The man stopped, his back still to her. Slowly he turned. Up close, Evelyn could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe 35, with a weathered face and eyes that held too much sadness for someone his age. "Yes, ma'am," he said carefully. Evelyn's mouth felt dry. Every eye on the street was now on her. She could feel Mrs. Thompson's gaze burning into her back. She began, then cleared her throat. "I have a room, a small one, if you don't mind it being small." The man stared at her, clearly suspicious. "You're offering me a room, if you need one," Evelyn said quietly. "It's not much, but it's warm. And it's better than a park." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. "My name's Jack," he said. "Jack Miller. This is my daughter Lily." Evelyn Carter. She managed a small smile at the little girl, who peeked at her with curious blue eyes. "Why don't you follow me home? We can discuss the details there." As Evelyn walked back to her car, she could feel the weight of the town's judgment pressing against her shoulders. She heard Mrs. Thompson's sharp whisper, "Has she lost her mind?" But when she glanced back and saw Jack Miller carefully buckling his daughter into the seat of his enormous Harley-Davidson motorcycle, adjusting her little helmet with such gentle care, Evelyn knew she'd made the right choice. Even if it was the choice that would change everything. Jack's motorcycle rumbled into Evelyn's driveway like rolling thunder, and within minutes, every curtain on Maple Street was drawn back with curious suspicious eyes peering out. Evelyn pretended not to notice as she unlocked her front door. "It's not much," she said, leading Jack and Lily inside. "But it's clean and warm." The house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. Jack stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to step on the worn carpet. "The room's upstairs," Evelyn continued, climbing the creaking staircase. "First door on the right. There's a bed, a dresser, and a small closet. The bathroom's across the hall." Jack followed, carrying Lily on his hip and a weathered duffel bag over his shoulder, apparently everything they owned in the world. The room was small, as promised, with faded floral wallpaper and a window that looked out over the snowy backyard. But the bed was made with clean sheets, and there was a small space heater in the corner. "It's perfect," Jack said quietly. Lily squirmed in his arms until he set her down. She immediately went to the window, pressing her small hands against the glass. "Daddy, look, there's birds. That's the bird feeder," Evelyn said. "I put seeds out every morning. You can help me tomorrow if you'd like." Lily's face lit up. "Really? Really?" Evelyn found herself smiling. A real smile, the first in longer than she could remember. Jack cleared his throat. "About the rent, ma'am." "Mrs. Carter, I meant what I said. I can pay up front." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it he produced a gold bracelet, delicate and clearly old. "This was my wife's. It's worth at least 1,000. You can hold it until—" "No," Evelyn said firmly. "I don't want your wife's bracelet." Jack's face hardened. "I'm not looking for charity. And I'm not offering it." Evelyn replied. "I'm offering a room for a fair price. $50 a week. Paid when you can pay it. That bracelet stays with you. Your wife would want your daughter to have it someday." Jack stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, and Evelyn realized it was relief. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. "You're welcome." Evelyn turned toward the door, then paused. "I usually have tea around 4. You're both welcome to join me. And there's leftover soup for dinner, if you're hungry." "We're hungry," Lily announced. Jack managed a small smile. "Lily, that's not polite." "It's fine," Evelyn said. "I always make too much anyway." That evening, for the first time in 15 years, Evelyn's kitchen table wasn't empty. Lily sat in the chair that had once been Michael Jr. Swinging her legs and slurping soup with the enthusiastic messiness of a 4-year-old. Jack sat where Thomas used to sit, eating slowly, cautiously, as if he still wasn't sure this was real. After dinner, Evelyn made hot chocolate, and they moved to the living room. Lily's eyes grew wide at the bookshelf in the corner. "You have so many books. Do you like stories?" Evelyn asked. "Yes, Daddy reads to me every night, even when we sleep in the truck." Jack's face flushed. "Lily, it's all right," Evelyn said gently. She pulled a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit from the shelf. "This was my son's favorite. Would you like me to read it to you? Lily nodded eagerly and climbed onto the couch next to Evelyn. Within minutes, she was curled against Evelyn's side, her eyes drooping as Evelyn's soft voice read about the toy rabbit who wanted to become real through being loved. Jack watched from the armchair, his expression complex, gratitude and pain mixed together. When the story ended, Lily was asleep. She's exhausted, Jack said quietly. We've been on the road for 3 weeks. She hasn't slept in a real bed since we left Nevada. What brought you to Millbrook? Evelyn asked, keeping her voice low. Jack was quiet for a long moment. I heard there might be work at the auto shop, and I wanted to find a place where we could settle. Lily needs stability. She needs to go to school, make friends, have a normal childhood. His voice cracked slightly. Not this. What happened to her mother? Evelyn asked gently. If you don't mind me asking. Sarah died when Lily was born. Jack stared at his hands, scarred tattooed hands that handled his daughter with such tenderness. Complications. The doctors said it was rare, just bad luck. She was here 1 minute, and then he trailed off. I'm so sorry, Evelyn whispered. I promised her I'd take care of our baby, that Lily would have a good life. But, he gestured at himself, at the tattoos, the leather vest draped over the armchair. Look at me. Nobody wants to rent to a guy like me. Nobody wants to hire me for anything but manual labor that doesn't pay enough. And Lily deserves better. She deserves a father who loves her. Evelyn said firmly. That's what she deserves. And she has that. Jack looked up at her, his eyes suspiciously bright. Let me help you, Evelyn continued. I can watch Lily while you look for work. I miss having someone to care for. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Evelyn smiled at the sleeping child. Besides, I think she and I are going to be good friends. The first week passed quietly. Too quietly. Every morning, Jack left early on his motorcycle, searching for work. He found odd jobs, helping at construction sites, fixing cars in back alleys, unloading trucks. He came home exhausted, smelling of motor oil and sweat, but he always had a smile for Lily. And every morning, after Jack left, Evelyn and Lily fell into a gentle routine. They fed the birds together. Evelyn taught Lily the names, cardinals, blue jays, sparrows. They made cookies, Lily standing on a step stool to help stir, getting flour everywhere. They read books, did puzzles, and drew pictures that Evelyn hung on the refrigerator. Grandma Evie, Lily called her now. Not Mrs. Carter, just Grandma Evie. The name made Evelyn's heart ache in the best possible way. But outside the warm bubble of the house on Maple Street, the town of Millbrook was not pleased. It started with whispers at the grocery store. Evelyn noticed people falling silent when she approached, then resuming their conversations in hushed tones after she passed. Then came the stares. Pointed, judgmental. Mrs. Thompson made her disapproval clear when Evelyn stopped by the flower shop to buy tulips for the kitchen table. I'm surprised to see you here, Mrs. Thompson said coolly, not meeting Evelyn's eyes as she wrapped the flowers. Given you're house guest, Jack and Lily are lovely tenants, Evelyn replied calmly. Tenants, Mrs. Thompson's lips pursed. Is that what we're calling it? Evelyn, people are worried about you. That man is dangerous. Those people bikers, they're criminals. Everyone knows that. Jack is a father trying to provide for his daughter, Evelyn said, her voice sharper than intended. There's nothing criminal about that. You don't know what he's done, what he might do. Mrs. Thompson leaned forward, lowering her voice. I'm saying this as a friend, Evelyn. You're putting yourself in danger, and people are talking. Let them talk, Evelyn said, taking her flowers and leaving. But the talking got worse. At church the following Sunday, the pew beside Evelyn remained conspicuously empty. The women who usually greeted her after service walked past without a word. When she went to the bakery on Tuesday, Mr. Kowalski, who'd sold her bread every Tuesday for 20 years, claimed he was sold out. She could see the fresh loaves on the shelf behind him. On Thursday evening, Evelyn found a note taped to her front door. No signature, just 3 words in angry capital letters, "Send them away." She crumpled it up before Jack could see, but her hands were shaking. That night, Jack noticed something was wrong. Everything okay? He asked, as they washed dishes after dinner. Fine, Evelyn lied. Evelyn, he said her name gently. I know I'm causing you problems. She wanted to deny it, but Jack wasn't stupid. He'd seen the stairs too, felt the hostility radiating from the town. It's nothing I can't handle, she said finally. Maybe Lily and I should go. No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. Evelyn took a breath. No. This is your home now, both of you. Don't let small-minded people dictate where you get to live. Jack studied her face. Why are you doing this? Really, Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Because when my son died, this whole town brought casseroles and sympathy cards. They filled my house with flowers and promises that I'd never be alone. She set down the dish she was washing. But after the funeral, they disappeared. The casseroles stopped coming. The house got quiet, and I realized that sympathy is easy. Actually being there, actually seeing someone who's struggling and doing something about it, that's hard. Most people can't be bothered. Her voice was thick with emotion. You and Lily needed help. I had help to give. It's that simple. Jack's eyes were shining. It's not simple. It's extraordinary. It's what anyone should do, Evelyn said, but she knew they both knew that's not what Millbrook thought. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday evening. 2 weeks after Jack and Lily had moved in, there was a knock at the door. Sharp official. Evelyn opened it to find Sheriff Barrett standing on her porch, his hand resting on his belt, his face apologetic but firm. Evening, Evelyn, he said. Behind him she could see Mrs. Thompson standing on the sidewalk, her phone in her hand. Sheriff. Evelyn kept her voice level. What can I do for you? I need to speak with Jack Miller if he's here. He's upstairs putting Lily to bed. Is there a problem? We've had concerns raised about Mr. Miller's presence in town. I just need to ask him a few questions. Evelyn's chest tightened. What kind of concerns? Now Evelyn, don't make this difficult. I'm just doing my job. Sheriff Barrett, you've known me for 30 years. Do I look threatened to you? The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. It's not about what I think. I've got complaints. I have to follow up. Complaints from who? But Evelyn didn't need to ask. She could see Mrs. Thompson's satisfied expression. Footsteps on the stairs. Jack appeared in the hallway, his face immediately guarded when he saw the uniform. Problem, officer. His voice was carefully neutral. Jack Miller. That's right. I'm Sheriff Barrett. I need to ask you a few questions. Do you have any outstanding warrants? Any parole conditions I should know about? No, sir. I've never been arrested. The sheriff looked surprised. Never, never. Jack's jaw was tight. I know what you're thinking. Guy like me must have a record, right? But I don't. You can check. I will check, the sheriff said. In the meantime, I need to verify that Mrs. Carter here is allowing you to stay of her own free will. Of course I am, Evelyn said, anger rising in her voice. I invited them. This is my house, Sheriff, and I'll decide who lives in it. Ma'am, I understand. But no, I don't think you do understand. Evelyn stepped forward. Jack Miller is my tenant. He pays his rent on time. He's respectful, he helps around the house, and his daughter is a delight. The only problem I have is with the people in this town who are so busy judging a man by his appearance, that they can't see the decent human being right in front of them. Sheriff Barrett held up his hands. All right, I hear you, Evelyn. Mr. Miller, I apologize for the intrusion. But you understand, I had to follow up. I understand, Jack said quietly. After the sheriff left, Evelyn stood in her doorway and stared directly at Mrs. Thompson, who was still standing on the sidewalk, her phone now down at her side. Satisfied, Helen, Evelyn called out. Mrs. Thompson had the grace to look uncomfortable. She turned and hurried away. Jack closed the door softly. Evelyn, I think, don't, Evelyn said. Don't say you should leave. Don't say you're sorry. Don't give these people what they want. They're making your life hell. They're revealing who they really are, Evelyn corrected, and teaching me who my real friends are. Turns out there aren't many. She managed a sad smile. But that's all right. I've got you and Lily. That's enough. Upstairs, Lily called out. Daddy, "Is everything okay?" Jack's face softened. "Yeah, baby, everything's fine, go to sleep." But everything wasn't fine, and they both knew it. 3 days later, everything changed. It was a Friday night, unseasonably cold, with a bitter wind that cut through layers of clothing. Evelyn was in the kitchen making dinner, a pot roast, because Jack had finally gotten steady work at McAllister's auto shop, and she wanted to celebrate. Lily was at the table coloring, and Jack was upstairs fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom. Then the sirens started. Loud, close, getting closer. Evelyn went to the window. Fire trucks were racing down Main Street, their lights painting the snow red and white. "Must be bad," Jack said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. The sirens multiplied. Police cars now, and ambulances. Evelyn's stomach knotted. In a town like Millbrook, this many emergency vehicles meant something terrible had happened. The phone rang. It was Susan Miller from the library, one of the few people who still spoke to Evelyn. "There's a fire," Susan said breathlessly. "The old warehouse district. It's spreading fast. And oh God, Evelyn, there are people trapped inside. Some teenagers were having a party in the abandoned building." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Teenagers, at least 5 or 6. The fire department's trying to get to them, but the structure's unstable. "It's bad, Evelyn. Really bad." Jack was already moving. "Where?" he demanded. "The warehouse district," Evelyn said, her hand trembling as she hung up. "There are children." Jack was pulling on his boots, his leather vest. "Stay here with Lily." "Jack, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he said simply. Then he was gone, the roar of his motorcycle fading into the wail of sirens. Evelyn stood frozen in her kitchen, her hands pressed to her mouth. Lily looked up from her coloring, confused. "Where's Daddy going?" "To help some people, sweetheart," Evelyn managed. Let's say a prayer for him." She knelt down beside Lily's chair, and took the little girl's hands. Together they prayed, something Evelyn hadn't done with such desperate fervor since the night Thomas died. The warehouse district was chaos. Fire had engulfed the old Murphy building, flames shooting through broken windows and licking at the night sky. The heat was intense even from across the street, where a crowd had gathered behind the police barricades. Jack pushed his way through, his eyes scanning the scene. Firefighters were shouting, directing water at the flames, but it was clear they were losing. The building was old, full of dry wood and years of accumulated debris. It was burning like kindling. "Stand back." A police officer tried to stop Jack. "Civilians need to stay, there are kids in there." Jack interrupted. "The fire department's handling it. Are they getting them out?" The officer's face told him everything. They weren't. The building was too unstable, the fire too hot. They were waiting for the structure to collapse, hoping the kids had found a way out on their own. Jack didn't think. He just moved. He broke through the barricade, ignoring the shouts behind him. The front entrance was an inferno, impassable. But there was a side door, half blocked by debris. He kicked it once, twice. It gave way. Smoke poured out, thick and black. Jack pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth and plunged inside. The heat was overwhelming. The air was poison. Jack could barely see 3 feet in front of him. "Hello?" he shouted. "Anyone here?" A scream. Faint, somewhere to his left. He followed the sound, crawling now because the smoke was thicker near the ceiling. His eyes were streaming, his lungs burning. There in the corner, huddled behind a collapsed shelf, 3 teenagers, 2 boys and a girl, coughing, terrified. "We can't get out," one of the boys sobbed. The stairs collapsed. "Come on," Jack rasped. "This way." "Stay low." He led them back toward the side door, one hand on the wall to guide him. The building groaned around them, the fire roaring like a living thing. They made it outside. The teenagers collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping. Paramedics rushed forward. "There's more?" Jack grabbed a firefighter's arm. "How many more?" "2 more kids. But the building's coming down any second." Jack turned back. "You can't go back in there," someone shouted. But he was already gone. The second trip was worse. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking his previous path. Jack had to find another way, crawling through spaces barely wide enough for his shoulders. the heat blistering his skin. He found them in what used to be an office, a boy maybe 16 and a little girl about 7 or 8. The boy was unconscious, and the little girl was crying hysterically. "It's okay," Jack told her, his voice raw from smoke. "I've got you." He hoisted the unconscious boy over his shoulder. Jesus, he was heavy, and grabbed the little girl's hand. "Don't let go of me," he told her, "no matter what." Getting out took an eternity. Every breath was agony. Jack's vision was fading at the edges, his legs threatening to give out. The little girl was coughing so hard she could barely walk. Behind them something massive crashed, part of the second floor giving way. "Almost there," Jack gasped. "Come on, sweetheart, just a little further." And then they were out. Fresh air hit Jack's face like a miracle. He collapsed on the pavement, still holding the little girl's hand, the unconscious boy beside him. Hands pulled at him. Paramedics, firefighters. Someone put an oxygen mask on his face. "You're insane," a firefighter was saying, but he was grinning. "Completely insane, and a goddamn hero." Jack couldn't respond. He was coughing too hard, his entire body shaking. The little girl was crying. My brother, okay? He's breathing," a paramedic assured her. "You're both going to be fine, thanks to this man." Through the crowd Jack saw a face he recognized. Mrs. Thompson, standing behind the barricade, her phone held up. She'd been recording the whole thing. Evelyn's phone rang at 9:47 p.m. "Mrs. Carter," an unfamiliar voice. "This is Millbrook Memorial Hospital. We have a Jack Miller here. He's asked us to call you." Evelyn's world tilted. "Is he all right?" "He's being treated for smoke inhalation. He'll be fine, but he wanted you to know he's okay." Evelyn called Susan to watch Lily and drove to the hospital faster than she'd ever driven in her life. She found Jack in the emergency room, an oxygen mask on his face, his skin blackened with soot. When he saw her, he tried to smile. "Don't you dare," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "Don't you dare smile at me, like that wasn't the stupidest, most reckless." She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. Jack pulled the mask aside. "The kids are okay," he rasped. "All 5 of them. You could have died, but I didn't." He reached for her hand. "And those kids are alive. That matters more." Evelyn sat down in the chair beside his bed, still holding his hand, and cried. She cried for Jack, for the children he'd saved, for her son who no one had been able to save, for the loneliness that had consumed her life until 2 weeks ago. Jack squeezed her hand and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Outside the hospital, a video was going viral. The video had 17,000 views by morning. By noon it had 200,000. By Sunday it was everywhere. The shaky footage showed everything. Jack running into the burning building while everyone else stood paralyzed. The agonizing minutes of waiting. The first group of teenagers stumbling out. Jack disappearing back inside. The crowd's horrified gasps. The building groaning, looking like it might collapse any second. Then Jack emerging a second time, carrying an unconscious boy, holding a little girl's hand, his face black with soot, but his expression determined, gentle. The caption, "Mrs. Thompson had added local biker risks life to save children from warehouse fire. This is Jack Miller, remember his name." The comments were overwhelming. "This man is a hero. Look at how gentle he is with that little girl. My heart." Everyone was afraid of him because of how he looks, but he's the only one who ran toward danger. We need more people like this in the world. The local news picked it up, then the national news. By Monday a reporter from CNN was calling Evelyn's house. Jack, recovering at home with bandaged hands and a persistent cough, was mortified by the attention. "I just did what anyone would do," he kept saying. "No," Evelyn corrected him. "You did what no one else was willing to do. There's a difference." The town of Millbrook, confronted with undeniable evidence of their own prejudice, didn't quite know how to respond. Some people, like Mrs. Thompson, were genuinely contrite. She showed up on Evelyn's doorstep Tuesday afternoon, with a casserole and tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she said simply. "About Jack. About you. I let fear and assumptions guide me instead of actually seeing what was in front of me." She wiped her eyes. "My granddaughter was one of the kids he saved. Emily, the 7-year-old. She snuck out to follow her older brother to that party. If Jack hadn't gone back in," she couldn't finish. "He did go back in," Evelyn said gently. "That's what matters. I spent 2 weeks calling you foolish, calling him dangerous." Mrs. Thompson's voice broke. "And he saved my granddaughter's life." Others in town were slower to come around. embarrassed by their own behavior, but not quite ready to admit they'd been wrong. They nodded at Jack on the street now, instead of crossing to avoid him. Small gestures, but meaningful. But the biggest surprise came on Saturday morning. Evelyn was in the kitchen with Lily, making pancakes when they heard it. A low rumble growing louder, the distinctive sound of multiple motorcycles. She went to the window and her jaw dropped. Riding down Maple Street was a convoy of bikers, at least 20 motorcycles, all Harley-Davidsons, all bearing the Hells Angels insignia. The whole neighborhood came out to watch, alarm on their faces. More trouble, they thought, more danger. But when the bikes parked in front of Evelyn's house, and the riders dismounted, the first thing they did was remove their helmets respectfully. The leader, a massive man in his 50s with a gray beard and kind eyes, walked up to the porch where Jack had emerged. Stunned. "Reaper," Jack said. "Brother," the man replied, and pulled Jack into a fierce hug. "We heard what you did, wanted to come pay our respects. You didn't have to." "Yes, we did." Reaper turned to Evelyn, who was standing in the doorway. "You must be Mrs. Carter." "Ma'am, I'm Daniel. They call me Reaper. Jack here used to ride with us, before he became a father, and decided he needed to go straight for his little girl's sake. We don't abandon our own," another biker added. "Never have, never will." What happened next was something Millbrook would talk about for years. The bikers unloaded their motorcycles, lumber, tools, paint, groceries, children's clothes, toys. Without asking, they got to work on Evelyn's house, fixing the sagging porch, replacing broken shingles, repainting the fence. Lily was delighted, running from biker to biker, chattering away. They were gentle with her, these rough-looking men with their tattoos and leather, treating her like she was made of glass. One biker, a woman named Raven with silver braided down her back, knelt down and handed Evelyn a wreath made of white roses. "For your husband," she said quietly. "Jack told us about him. About your son too. This is for them, and for you taking care of our brother when he needed it most." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Slowly, cautiously, the people of Millbrook began to emerge from their houses. They watched the bikers work, watched them laugh with Lily, watched how respectful they were, how organized, how kind. Mrs. Thompson was the first to approach. She carried a pitcher of lemonade. "I thought, maybe you all would like something to drink," she said nervously. Reaper smiled at her. "That's mighty kind of you, ma'am. Thank you." That broke the ice. More neighbors came forward. Someone brought sandwiches. Someone else brought coffee. The teenage boys Jack had saved from the fire showed up with their parents, wanting to thank him in person. Emily, Mrs. Thompson's granddaughter, ran straight to Jack and threw her arms around his legs. "You saved me," she said, looking up at him with huge eyes. "You're my hero." Jack crouched down to her level, his face soft. "You're very brave, Emily. You stayed calm in there. That helped me find you." "I was scared," she admitted. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Jack told her gently. "It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway." Emily's father, a man named David Thompson, Mrs. Thompson's son, stepped forward. His eyes were red, his voice thick. "I don't know how to thank you. Emily is my whole world." When I got the call that she was trapped in that fire, he couldn't continue. Jack stood and extended his hand. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad she's safe." David shook his hand, then pulled him into an unexpected embrace. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. You hear me? Anything." By afternoon, Maple Street looked like a block party. The bikers had set up a small speaker system, playing classic rock at a reasonable volume. Someone started grilling hamburgers. Children who'd been taught to fear these leather-clad strangers were now climbing on their motorcycles, giggling as the bikers made engine sounds and pretended to race. Reaper found Evelyn in her garden, where she'd retreated for a moment of quiet. "Your home is beautiful, ma'am," he said, settling onto the bench beside her. "Thank you. My husband built that fence. That was the last project he finished before." She trailed off. "Jack told me about your losses. I'm sorry." Evelyn nodded. "When Jack and Lily came into my life, I thought I was helping them. But really they helped me. This house has been so quiet for so long. Now it's full of life again." Reaper smiled. "Jack's a good man. Always has been. People see the vest, the tattoos, and they think they know the whole story. But they don't know that Jack spent 3 years taking care of his dying mother before she passed. They don't know he's never touched drugs, never hurt anyone, never even gotten a speeding ticket. Why did he join the Hells Angels? Evelyn asked. Because when his father beat him bloody and threw him out at 16, we were the ones who took him in, fed him, gave him a place to sleep, taught him how to fix bikes so he could make an honest living. Reaper's voice was firm. People think we're all criminals. Some clubs, sure, they've got bad elements. But our chapter? We're mostly veterans, mechanics, fathers. We ride for charity. We escort abused kids to court so they don't have to face their abusers alone. We do toy runs every Christmas. I didn't know that, Evelyn said softly. Most people don't. They don't want to know. It's easier to judge. Reaper stood adjusting his vest. But you didn't judge, Mrs. Carter. You saw a man and his daughter who needed help, and you helped them. That's rare, rarer than you might think. He walked back toward the house, leaving Evelyn with her thoughts. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the gathering, something unexpected happened. Father Michael arrived. The elderly priest walked slowly up the driveway, his eyes taking in the scene. The bikers, the neighbors, the children playing together. Father, Evelyn said, surprised. I didn't expect you. I heard there was quite a gathering here. Father Michael said with a gentle smile. And I wanted to see the fruits of the seed I planted. The seed you planted. My sermon, 3 weeks ago, about unexpected guests testing our compassion. His eyes twinkled. You were the only one who heard it, Evelyn. Really heard it, and look what came from one act of kindness. He gestured to the crowd. Mrs. Thompson laughing with Raven about something. David Thompson helping Jack carry wood. Emily sitting on Reaper's enormous shoulders, giggling. You brought this community together, Father Michael continued. Not through judgment or fear, but through love, through seeing the humanity in someone everyone else had dismissed. I just did what was right, Evelyn said. Exactly. The priest squeezed her hand. You did what was right, even when it was hard, even when it cost you. That's the definition of faith in action. As darkness fell, someone lit the fire pit in Evelyn's backyard. The crowd gathered around, and someone started telling stories. The bikers shared tales of their rides across America, the places they'd seen, the people they'd met. The townspeople shared their own stories, slowly at first, then with growing warmth. 3 months later, Evelyn's garden was blooming. She knelt in the dirt, showing Lily how to plant tomato seeds, while Jack worked on building a small greenhouse against the side of the house. Like this, Grandma Evie? Lily asked, carefully pressing a seed into the soil. Perfect, sweetheart. Just like that. The sound of a car pulling up made them look. Mrs. Thompson was climbing out, carrying what looked like a photo album. I hope I'm not interrupting, she called out. Not at all, Evelyn said, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. We were just finishing up. Mrs. Thompson settled into one of the porch chairs, and Evelyn joined her while Lily ran off to help Jack with the greenhouse, which mostly consisted of handing him the wrong tools and asking a million questions. I wanted to show you something, Mrs. Thompson said, opening the album. It was full of photographs from the day the bikers had come, candid shots of the gathering, of the town coming together, of barriers being broken. David took these, Mrs. Thompson explained. He's putting together a display for the library, about prejudice and redemption, about what this town learned. Evelyn studied the photos. There was one of Jack crouching down to talk to Emily, his scarred hands gentle on her shoulders. One of Reaper lifting a child onto his motorcycle, while the parents watched, no longer afraid. One of the whole crowd gathered around the fire pit, faces illuminated by warmth and something more, understanding. We were so wrong, Mrs. Thompson said quietly. All of us. We saw the leather and the tattoos, and we assumed we knew the whole story, but we didn't know anything. You were afraid, Evelyn said. Fear makes us do foolish things. It does. Mrs. Thompson paused. But you weren't afraid. Why? Evelyn thought about that. Because I'd already lost everything I could lose. My husband. My son. For years I was just existing, going through the motions. She looked over at Lily, who was now covered in sawdust and laughing. And then they came into my life, and suddenly I had a reason to wake up in the morning again. I wasn't going to let fear take that away from me. Mrs. Thompson wiped her eyes. You saved them, you know. But I think they saved you too. Yes, Evelyn agreed softly. They did. That evening, as the sun set in shades of gold and pink, the three of them sat on the porch together, Jack in Thomas's old rocking chair, which he'd finally fixed and made his own, Lily between them, reading a book, and Evelyn in her chair, knitting a blanket. It was an ordinary moment, the kind of moment that happens in families all over the world, every single day. But for Evelyn Carter, who'd spent 15 years eating dinner alone at a table set for three, who'd lived in a house full of ghosts and silence, this ordinary moment was everything. Grandma Evie. Lily looked up from her book. Will you always be here? Evelyn set down her knitting and pulled the little girl close. Always, sweetheart. This is our home, all of ours. Jack met her eyes over Lily's head, and his expression said what words couldn't. Thank you, for everything. For believing in us when no one else would. Evelyn smiled. No, she thought. Thank you, for bringing life back into this old house, for filling it with laughter and love and purpose. As darkness fell over Millbrook, lights began to wink on in windows up and down Maple Street. Inside those houses were families having dinner, watching television, going through the comfortable routines of daily life. And in the house at the end of the street, the one with the newly painted fence and the blooming garden, and the Harley-Davidson parked in the driveway, there was a family too, different from what anyone expected. Bound not by blood but by choice, by kindness, by the fundamental truth that family is what you make it. Outside, the wind chimed through the bells Jack had hung from the porch, a gift from the bikers, inscribed with a simple phrase, "Home is where they accept you." And in that moment, as the three of them sat together in the gathering darkness, surrounded by warmth and love, and the simple peace of belonging, Evelyn knew that after 15 years of winter, spring had finally come.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.